Look, everyone, it's important to talk about skeptics and dumb bunkers because of the great injustice they do to society and their actual crimes against humanity, which is actually what these people do, particularly when they attack higher consciousness, independent functioning of people seeking truth. There's a much bigger issue here with so-called skeptics and the dumb bunkers. One of these is the convicted criminal Brian Dunning, who features a weekly podcast called Skeptoid. A laughingly comical podcast coming from a very delusional thinking person. But after all, that's what all these scientist supporters really are. Basing an entire reality on a system that is based on maybes, ifs, and doubts, otherwise known as theory. Because all science is based on theory, there's virtually little to no facts in science because it constantly changes. As most things in life do, as people reach higher states of consciousness and understand things better. But this person who was involved in illegal activities of getting commissions from what apparently are sales, particularly from eBay, we refer someone, and of course this goes on all the time. There's all sorts of affiliate programs that many people are involved in, including myself, where people buy things and then you get a commission from the sales of it. We do it with the Tachyon people, and this is very common practice done everywhere. You sell other people's products, and when you sell other people's products, you get a percentage of the sale. I mean, it's almost like being a retailer. A retailer buys somebody else's products or given them, and when they sell them, they get the cost over the cost of the item. So if you buy an item at $50, sell it for $100, you keep that $50. So this is standard business. Affiliate programs are really no different as long as you're being paid after a sale of an item. Excuse me. Which is how Dunning claims. Now, Dunning was in this business, and this business big time. He had a large operation with apparently stated by himself of 4 full-time and 12 part-time or contracted employees, which is a fairly large company if you're looking at 16 people working full-time. So this is not just a small organization. Secondly, even though he claims it was, when you start getting up into $1 million sales, you're no longer a small company. I would say a small company makes $1 million or under. Once you make $1 million and over, you're a medium-sized company approaching large. $5 million in sales or generated revenues from eBay is quite a bit of money. And he took a large salary from that. So, as with all these things, they get very complicated in details. Now, he has posted on briandunning.com his side of the story. And I don't want to get into the details of everything. I've read his side of the story. I've read other people's sides of the story. And, when it gets into things like this, it becomes a murky world. As far as I'm concerned, anything on the internet, when it comes to non-verified contact, which means hits from search engines, etc., which I have in the past paid for per hits, and they're used up very quickly with absolutely no sales coming from them. I always wondered what's going on there. Now, of course, you can see hits on your site. It wouldn't be too difficult to send a whole bunch of traffic to a site, and I've had this done even recently, where I had thousands of people show up and not a single sale for it for several weeks, done by an internet person who filtered sales to the particular site. But the problem is just getting people to go to a site or sending people there that are not interested really doesn't do anything. But you have to really wonder, if you've got thousands and thousands of people coming to your site and not a single sale, how real is that? And that gets into a whole nother subject matter, which I don't want to overly cover here. But anytime you get into this murky world, we have a problem. And those people who are in control in this completely scripted world that we live in, totally and completely controlled, of course, have made a lot of their controlled people, the people who work in their criminal teams, lots of money through the internet. It's quite obvious with a lot of people that are in these particular fields that have made their money. I mean, the entire James Randi organization has a lot of these people in it. One of the people in his board of directors made his money as an internet millionaire. Another kind of foggy business of what it was. And here again, I can't do endless research and spend hours and hours looking into this. But as a board of directors, him along with a naval officer, another government connection, are on his board of directors as people making decisions, doing things, and putting up the money. Interesting. And there's a lot of people, and you can make somebody millions and billions of dollars on the internet very, very quickly. I also believe people like Elon Musk and other people who, as far as I'm concerned, put together a fraudulent system of charging other people's credit cards, which is illegal, and there are people in prison today, and have been, and probably still be put in prison in today, for actually using their credit card accounts to bill other people's business expenses, meaning, but I don't want to get into that either and diverse any more than I have here. But it seems like there's an awful lot of these things and these kind of people they get propped up. And of course, when you get into these areas and people are making money off of these things, and Dunning claims that he didn't make a single dime unless it was a direct commission from an actual sale. So it wasn't just paying money for hits like you pay search engines. Search engines send traffic to you, no matter how bad that is, and you pay a certain amount of money per the person they send you. It doesn't matter if they buy or not. He claims that he was only paid for commissions on a was typically a commission basis from an actual sale. So the whole idea is that they were bringing traffic to a company that normally wouldn't get that traffic, we think. So it's always better to pay somebody a commission on sales. This is what wholesaling is. You wholesale to someone because they're going to get customers that you normally can't reach. Of course, that's how wholesaling is supposed to work. If you're getting the same customers or you're getting your old customers, then there's a problem. So the whole idea is that this is what happened, and it become very murky that using certain internet technologies, we're grabbing people, pushing them to different sites, and he was making money because of this. Again, it's murky. I do believe some of his story, as I believe others as well. This is a murky area, and when you're making $5.2 million in commissions from eBay, how is this being done? And it's awful effective by just sending people there and you're getting this high rate. So obviously what was being done was working if his claim is correct. But apparently there was some shenanigans here. Others claim, and I have no idea if any of this is true, that he was taking customers from other people's hits and pushing them out of the way, stealing their referrals and making them his own. Who knows what the truth of all this is? The problem when you get into the legal system, otherwise known as scientific social system, that he completely, totally believes in. He believes in the system. He believes in everything about the system. So the problem here is that when you're actually a dumb bunker, a skeptic, and you get into trouble and you go to the systems that you've claimed are so wonderful and so workable, that is very hard to defend yourself. This is the system that he feels is correct, that is scientifically based, proven over the years, and how it works. There's certainly no corruption. Nothing is wrong. There's never any liars, because this is what skepticism is based on, that scientists are basically Jesus figures. They don't have belly buttons. They were immaculate conceived, touched on the head by Jesus himself, so that every conclusion they come to, everything they do, everything they write, is based in pure, straightforward truth. It certainly wasn't any corruption. It wasn't any corporation to pay them to look the other way. They didn't contrive results. They didn't bother to follow through. They didn't in any way take huge liberties to make sure things came out in their favor. Oh, no, they're scientists. Jesus goes to them for advice. He also claims all sorts of individual corruption, problems, lies, deceptions. Of course, this doesn't happen in science. Nobody lies, nobody's deceptive, there's no money involved. He even claims his closest partner totally sold him out and traded him on his explanation went on, apparently. That there were also wrongdoing by eBay, and certain employees disappeared or were transferred to other branches where they were unable to be gotten easily. All of which, to be quite honest with you, I believe, because I'm a realist. I know what truth is. I've been involved in the legal systems, and I know the kind of corrupt nonsense the legal system is and how corrupt people are in general, companies, etc. I've had experiences that I could spend hours with of telling you how people out and out lied. Constantly lied, contrived things, set up things on a massive criminal basis. So I know, I'm a realist. I know what truth is. I'm not buying into a system that tells me something, and then when it doesn't suit me or they go after me, that I all of a sudden say the system is wrong, that people really aren't honest. They don't tell the truth. People don't tell the truth out there. Nobody's telling the truth. People lie. Brian Dunning, a skeptoid. And you know it for 100%. It's happened to you in your life. And apparently you spent 14 months behind locked federal prison to think about this, yet you still, after these traumatic experiences, buy into the same system that convicted and threw away the key. Very, very interesting to have that kind of warped, strange way of thinking. And ultimately, science, or truth, as he claims science ultimately delivers, which can be equated to the federal court system, should have found him innocent because they had truth, yet they found him guilty, and he had to plead out, so he claims, which is typical in these cases, is that instead of wasting our time, we know you're guilty, we'll, instead of getting 17 months in prison, he only got 14, so he claims. He wasn't facing a huge amount of time, so he states, either, and I don't want to get into these minutiae of these things. People have jumped on him, and he deserves it since he jumps on everybody else without having any information or background on it. But there's bigger issues here. Obviously, this person has no value of judgment. He did get into trouble. He states even on his own that, things were not good, obviously. But, looking at $5 million, it's hard to say, well, maybe we should get off this train now. So all sorts of things happen, and the details really aren't important. What we're talking about is the bigger picture here. So the point is that I don't know how we can possibly give him any credit, even though I do because I understand the system, when he's a person that believes in the truth of the system and the people that work in it, otherwise known as scientists, lawyers, doctors, etc., who are constantly affected by all sorts of things, and mostly their pocketbook. Certainly, scientists who are involved in things. And by the way, he's not a scientist. He has an interesting educational background, including another connection to Mormons, going to Brigham Young University, similar to Skeptic's magazine founder, who apparently was going to Pepperdine, a Mormon college. I guess you don't have to be Mormon to go there, but knowing the Mormons, I find it hard to believe you'll get into their colleges unless you are. But they'd always allow a little bit in to make things look right, as they did with the Marriott hotels, where the peasants paid low salaries where non-Mormons, everybody else was. Certainly from my personal experience, that's what I've seen. So the whole idea is that as we look into that, this guy sets himself up into big-time trouble. So the system that he believes in convicted him of this, and pretty clearly. So, and he buys into it, so we can't believe anything he said. We have to believe that the system and that his pleading guilty to a crime was all part of what should have happened, and quite frankly, he should not have been able to give a plea because he was guilty. I mean, that's the kind of thinking that he tells you. And he's very quick to jump on everybody else, to make sure that everybody else is laughed at, that has no validity, to actually go by what are poor statements about people. He's done a lot of poor research, which I've done, particularly on people. When I've looked carefully into his so-called evidence and information, it is sketchy at best, and there is really little to no follow-up, and I've caught him in what apparently seems to be extrapolations on basic opinions from other people. That's not science, people. He did this to an investigator, a Christian investigator of paranormal activities, which he distorted that person's image, which I could not find what he stated about this person at all. I'd like to know how he could find it if I couldn't when I looked into this. But the point is that he's the one that supports the system that does this, and it's interesting is that he also doesn't seem to have the courage, the balls, or in any way any kind of manly virtues, certainly not seeking truth, to criticize things like religions, the court systems, police, the federal agencies that indicted him, all the things that he claimed were done wrong against him, he doesn't come out and say anything about. But certainly can attack things that really have no value in our society at all. Bigfoot, Uri Geller, psychic power. Well, these are really big issues that affect our lives. So it just shows you the kind of weaselly person what a kind of a low-level, non-courageous person this person is, who refuses to take on really serious issues and talk about the serious fraud, lies, and deceptions within common science, and how every single scientist in the system is controlled and scripted to do exactly what the corporations that pay their meal tickets, their grants, the money they get to live on, the money they get to do research, is paid by these corporations. And you're not going to come out and say that something is bad when the peanut corporation paid you $50 million to do research. You're going to come out and find out how wonderful peanuts are. Which, by the way, is happening right now. And there seems to be an overlooking of some highly toxic fungi in peanuts that are strong carcinogens. But it's an international rage now because peanuts are cheap to grow, easy to grow, and tasty. I love peanuts personally, particularly peanut butter, which is super high in calories, super high in oils, and super high in funguses. So as we go into this, some people are so allergic to those funguses that they can die by eating one peanut, which is common to have peanut allergies because of the fungus on them. So all of these things that go into this, he completely and totally ignores and refuses to deal with these kind of weighty subjects because they're not very sexy. They don't get you talking agreements to go talk about the corrupt legal system that everybody's helping and working for. He certainly doesn't have the courage to talk about all the horrible things that the fake law enforcement that works for criminals is involved in. He doesn't talk about anything of really any value. It's really kind of jokey what he talks about. And then he goes around and wants to tell everybody what kind of an honest, truthful person, and he is really connected to truth and what's right and good. This person, a convicted felon, regardless of the details, he supports every other society-based reality. So this is truth. He is guilty. This is a known fact that he is a convicted felon. Goes to schools and talks to children about what is truth and not. Now, I wonder really, do these schools actually know when they invite this person into their classrooms, to their events, that they have a convicted felon that are talking to children and giving them information? Well, I think they certainly should. Or is this another one of his convenient frauds because this is his new career? He runs a nonprofit organization, of course, which just means that whatever profits you make over salary, and Red Cross pays their top people $600,000 to $1 million a year, $600,000 to $1 million a year in salaries. They're a nonprofit. So people need to understand. It's not like everybody's working for free. You can't work for free. How can you work when you have bills to pay, food to put in your belly? So he's running a nonprofit, taking whatever salary he does out of it. And whatever excess money is made, which never really becomes the case with small nonprofits, you just up your salary because you're never really paid enough to begin with. So that's how nonprofits work for all of those who are confused about how that goes. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the only thing you're not taxed on is profits because you don't really have any. Anyway, but if you do, that's channeled back into the organization. And of course, by doing that, it really means you don't have profits, so you wouldn't be taxed anyway. You do pay payroll taxes and everything else. So the point is that when you get into these types of things, and you're a person who's out there talking about how everybody else is corrupt, not doing things right, and even if they're good intentions, like he claims, they are attacked by him as having no credibility whatsoever. When, of course, there are research project after research project dating back now over 100 years confirming the existence of the biophysical empowerments. And it just goes on and on and on, which he just recently has stated in one of his podcasts that there's never been a shred of evidence of the proof of any of this. Complete total lies. But I guess this is the same type of blinder-looking, misunderstanding, misconception that got him into the same kind of business problems of not understanding that what he was doing was wrong, and he was making huge amounts of money, tricking and confusing at the very least, and what else he was doing within his particular system. So, this guy, of course, is now the moral judge, the person who's going to tell us the facts about what true science is, going to speak to our children in our schools, give them free of his podcast recordings and other things he makes, and speak at these events all. This is the person that is out there. And apparently schools are willing, and I believe it's even against school policies and federal and state policies, to bring a convicted felon into a school. If it isn't, it certainly should be. But here's a guy who has made this mistake and claims to have lost a lot of money or whatever. I don't know. He's still living, or claims his address is still Laguna Niguel, the Beverly Hills of beach communities, second only to Malibu in wealth, or maybe they're even equal. So he seems to be still living very high on the hog. So the whole idea is that this doesn't make sense that this guy is going to make all these judgment problems, get involved in bad businesses, have everything go against him, and now he's going to figure out something different in some other reality. And I've already stated that I've found huge gaps in his research in other areas. He's made misstatements. He's taken a statement made by someone who really isn't a good source of information, and then added to that to make that, to demonize that person so that his case looks better. Well, this is very sad, everybody, and this is the kind of people that these skeptics have representing themselves. I will cover James Randi as well, another person who was involved in criminal activities involving his homosexual or same-sex relationship that he was involved with, he is still involved with, and lying about his own sexuality as well. I mean, how can these people talk about truth and credibility from others when they personally don't have any credibility at all? And, you know, hiding homosexuality in this day and age, and even past, is ridiculous because most people could care less. And secondly, anybody that knew him, knew his relationship, and knew he was a homosexual. Now, why are you hiding that, James Randi? And then getting involved in questionable activities that get him arrested, trying to help a person who has illegally immigrated to this country. So the whole idea is that these things become this mired mess of nonsense, and then these people go out on the road telling us exactly what is right and what is wrong. Well, I have a real problem with that, a big, big problem. And Brian Dunning is a prime example of those out there who are telling people facts and figures when their personal credibility is in great question. And by the established law of this land of being a convicted felon, he's lost a lot of rights, and he should have lost the right to be shooting his mouth off in state and federally funded places like schools to give his little warped version of reality. This is pretty sad. And this is the person they march out. And this seems to go through the skeptic community dramatically. If this was a person who was a actual occultists or others, just like James Randi, who tried to slur the SRI scientists by stating that Russell Targ's father owned an occult bookshop. Now, I'm not sure that's true or not, because Randi has made all sorts of statements that seem not to be true. Even if it was, what does that mean? Russell Targ is an accredited scientist, went to school, has high degrees in scientific areas. I don't care if Daddy was a pig farmer. What does that have to do with anything? Has to do with what he thinks a little different. Well, he qualified through the system and didn't do anything illegal like you have done, Randi, and you have done, Mr. Dunning. Per your qualified people to judge you, just like you go to your select scientists to get your select opinion, you went to your select legal people and they found you guilty and sentenced you to prison where you actually served time. Now, that's a reality. That is truth. That is a fact of the situation. And anyone else, you'd be screaming the kind of criminal that they were, and how could they possibly believe anything that this convicted felon states. And let's get real. We know exactly that's what this guy would do. And his cohorts in his community. Now, He's certainly welcome to do his ridiculous business and state his ridiculous opinions on his own personal forums, and anyone who wants to listen to it or go to his particular sites. He certainly shouldn't be selling or donating his services to schools, going among our children as a convicted felon and telling them what is right about the world and what is a proven thing. And like most of these people, and maybe this is all part of his little deal, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever, as that, of course, they have yet another slave in the pursuit of this very corrupt and evil world that is scripted every single bit of the way and controlled. Well, now they have somebody that they control to go out and scream their corporate generated fantasies about what is science and real to the public, to keep them in a disinformation diluted reality and the basic controlled slaves of society, or their actual money, or should we say wage slaves, which society is all about. What the real story is, we'll never know. But certainly, this is what skeptics have to offer us as one of their main mouthpieces, as well as the main organization, which I will cover in another audio as stated, of the James Randi Foundation, which of course is very old now and retired from, but the foundation is still going somewhat, even though their ridiculous offers they made and everything else apparently have been canceled. And their numerous supporters who give them thousands and thousands of dollars a year to run that organization. People like Penn and Teller, the people from the Ghostbusters TV shows, the hosts, and a large group of other people who are out there to discredit or to take care of anybody who is their competition, meaning they do fake magic and they want to go after the real magic people, as Houdini did, because they're worried about their pocketbook. Not to mention the hidden agenda of working for corporations to discredit anything that comes up new or is alternative. So these people are doing crimes against humanity. These people who have done these crimes against humanity are talking in your schools. They're having brought into schools, talking to your children to give their own personal, warped opinion of reality, when we already know in society, not me as an occult scientist, a person who knows truth, who seeks truth, but the society which he lives in and values so much has labeled him a convicted felon.